Well, welcome everyone to this second episode of Gaza on My Mind, Gaza على بالي. My name is Bassam Haddad, joined by two warrior powerhouses, Jenan Matari, my co-host, and Adel Iskandar, our guest host, whom I'll introduce in just a minute. This is Gaza on My Mind, Gaza على بالي, episode 2 on journalism in Gaza and media representations in the West. We are not 100% sure what media representation in the West means, given the word West, but in all cases, it's crappy. We'll unfold and unpack later. This program here is essentially saying, in response to the expectations that we are going to go away after 8 months of Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza, after 8 months of reporting, of watching, reading, acting, protesting, there's this expectation that we will indeed go away and that Gaza coverage will be relegated to optional news. We are here to say that we are not going anywhere. The conversation about Gaza must continue. We will keep Gaza right front and center on the daily and weekly. Every week, we'll be hosting a free-form engagement like this one on all things Gaza, and we will be featuring or inviting folks from all over, primarily from Gaza, if we are able to get a hold of them without endangering them in any way, shape, or form. So let me reintroduce my guests and say hello again. Jenan and Adel, أهلا وسهلا.
Hello.
Hi, Bassam.
أهلا وسهلا فيكم. Okay, so without much ado, let me just say that we will be joined today by a few guests that will join us in just a little bit. Hind Khoudary will join us via video, but maybe live. Laila Al-Arian will also be joining us, and Afeef Nessouli will be joining us as well in just a few minutes. First, the people you see in front of you here will talk a little bit about the topic of media reporting. We all do know that when it comes to representation in mainstream media, specifically mainstream media or corporate media, we do know it's poor. We do know it's duplicitous. We do know it's hypocritical, Islamophobic, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and or, of course, the icing on the cake, the tenor of the reporting on mainstream media on Gaza has been genocide enabling. There are, of course, exceptions, and we do know these exceptions. We have with us to start the conversation Jenan and Adel. Let me say that Jenan is a two-time award-winning Palestinian storyteller and producer. And for the second week in a row, she has been so busy that she hasn't been able to send me the full bio. So this is where you're at, Jenan. After you go, I'll introduce Adel, which has a long bio because he sent it to me. It's all you, Jenan.
Okay. I thought I told you this is officially my new bio. There is no more after that. But for those who don't know, my background, my educational background and my career background actually is in media studies, journalism, and social psychology. So journalism and Western coverage is my jam. It's my expertise. And so I think that I've made it pretty clear that over the last 7 months, my main mission with content and any conversation that I'm having is to get people to understand the harm that Western mainstream media has caused for communities like Palestinian one, like Arab, like Muslim, brown and black communities and indigenous communities in general have always been harmed by media. We call these outlets that people trust legacy outlets, right? Legacy media. We hear that word a lot. And we think that they obtained this title of legacy media because of their trustworthiness, because they always report the truth, because they have integrity. This is what we've been fed. But if you look back at media's position on nearly every time period where a human crisis was being enacted by some empire, they are always on the side of the empire. They receive the title of legacy media because they are an arm of the state. They are an arm of oppression. And I think that for the first time in the context of Palestine, people are finally starting to understand that, because Palestinians and our supporters have been our own press. We have been able to kind of take control of this narrative that they have been feeding people for years and show people the truth. And it comes naturally to us. Palestinians are, in my bio, I call myself a storyteller, but that's just, the indigenous identity. We're all storytellers by birth. And so telling the story of what's happening to our people in Gaza, in occupied West Bank, it's a natural just way of living for us. We just tell our stories. And so finally, people have learned to see indigenous storytelling as a valid form of communication and oral history and survival. And so I think that that's the difference this time, is that people have been able to kind of spot mainstream media's job in spreading propaganda, and it's because they're finally listening to indigenous voices, and they're hearing the truth from Palestinians. There is no arguing this, right? Like when we talk about things, the media during World War II and Vietnam and the civil rights movement, there was this argument that people didn't know what was happening, right? Like, oh, oppression happened and millions of people have died throughout the years during these genocides because we couldn't see it. We didn't know what was happening. This time we see it. This is like the first live streamed genocide that is directly combating the propaganda that mainstream legacy media has been feeding people. And so they're finally starting to question it. And it's because of people like us. It's because of people like Hind, who are on the ground in Gaza, that legacy media is getting a run for their money right now. People aren't accepting their propaganda anymore. That's my long-winded media is shit. Listen to your own rant. You're on mute, Bassam.
Not at all, Jenan. This is a great window into what we'll be discussing. I have a lot to say, actually, but we do have a lot to cover. And last time we promised that we don't want to go over an hour. So I'll move to Adel and I'll chime in as necessary going forward. Adel, did you want to first? Well, let me first introduce you because you have a proper bio.
Keep it short.
Keep it short. Okay. Adel Iskandar is professor of global communication at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada. He's author, co-author, and editor of several works, including Egypt In Flux, Essays on Unfinished Revolution, Al-Jazeera, The Story of the Network that is Rattling Governments and Redefining Modern Journalism. And then, of course, another book, yet, Edward Said, A Legacy of Emancipation and Representation, and Mediating the Arab Uprisings with myself. This is a book that we co-edited. And then his work deals with media identity and politics, and he has lectured extensively everywhere, actually worldwide. So I'm not going to continue, but also Adel is the director of a center at Simon Fraser currently, and he comes to us from Canada. So Adel, the floor is yours, and tell me when you want me to.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Bassam. First and foremost, I just want to say the most important point that I wanted to say is a disclaimer, and the most important part of my bio is the fact that I'm coming to you today and joining this call and conversation from the unceded and stolen territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and other Coast Salish nations that are the indigenous landowners of the Pacific Northwestern part of colonial Canada. So I say this because we cannot talk about decolonization, not just of land or practices or representations, before thinking about the land on which we're situated. So I just wanted to say that up front. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this discussion, and I really have a lot to say, but I'm going to try not to be long-winded. I really appreciate the work that's been done by Jenan and folks who are pushing the boundaries here as far as Western media's coverage, but also Hind and so many other Palestinian journalists reporting from the ground in Gaza and pushing the boundaries of what it constitutes to be telling the story of Palestinians. I just want to perhaps talk a little bit, not about silver linings, but talk about both the progress that's been made and the impact that's been apparent because of the work that's been done by Palestinian journalists and Palestinian storytellers, like the ones that will join us today. So I'm going to show you if you don't mind, Bassam, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Just by way of context, just want to say that this conflict, the war, this genocide that is happening in Gaza is happening not just against Palestinians, it is happening against storytellers, it's happening against journalists, and it's happening against those who are narrating and witnessing the complete erasure of an entire society. So whether it's reporting from or stories that are coming out from Reporters Without Borders, RSF, or other organizations such as Committee to Protect Journalists, which have documented the single most lethal war against journalists in the history of the documentation of such matters.